Okay, let's start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Kazakhstan American Corners program. It's ACK Teachers Development Teacher Professional Development Series. ACK means American Corners Kazakhstan. Today's our first session. I'm so excited to have all of you because it's been a little bit time after our last session. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sultanat. I'm American Corners Nur-Sultan coordinator. I'm sorry, I guess someone using a microphone. If you're not using it, please turn it off. Thank you. Let's continue. So, yeah, I'm coordinator of American Corners Nur-Sultan, and I will be with you along with my colleague behind the scene, the Sun, who will be serving you as a moderator. Yep. So today, like I said before, is our first session, and we will talk about the emotional intelligence for success in Kazakhstan. And here we have a list of all of our future sessions. Let me know in the comments, let us know which one you're most excited about. Let's see. So today we're gonna have just most of them a speech part, 60 minutes, like a theoretical part. And also maybe at the end, we're gonna have some time for questions. Now I would like also usually to remind you about our rules. Like I said before, for stable connection, please turn off your microphone if you're not using it. If you have any questions, you can ask them in the chat box. We'll check the chat box and answer you. Another important moment that the meeting is being recorded, so no worries. If you're not able right now to see our session, it will be available on our YouTube channel. By the way, we have the recording from our other session with Mr. August on YouTube already. Let me show you our YouTube channel. So we will easily find it in the future. On the search board, just type American Corners Kazakhstan. Just a second. It will be easy to find. Dasan, could you please write on the board? We see just your YouTube channel right now. Yeah, here we are. This is our YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Kazakhstan American Corners. And if you go to the videos, not at home, like next page, please, videos. Here's all our recordings. We did it available to from the March of 2020, I guess. It's like almost 1 year since we started our YouTube channel, and all recordings are available here. Just subscribe us. Thank you. The last rule, it's about certificate. Our teachers like a certificate to add to your CV, and it's good to your profile, and we will try to help you with it. If you'll attend at least 3 out of 5 sessions, then you're gonna receive an official certificate. Sounds good, right? And now I would like to hand you over to our virtual English language fellow in US Department of State program, Mr. August Garnsey. Mr. August Garnsey, long time no see. Welcome. We're happy to have you here with us.
All right. Thank you, Sultanat. And good evening, everyone. Hello. Such a nice thing to all of us to be together again here for this another terrific series and session that I'm really excited and looking forward to. But I hope that everyone is doing well. I know that we're all living very busy lives right now, but being able to make the time, take the initiative to be able to continue still with our development professionally. And also we learn things that we can apply in our personal everyday life as well too, through a lot of things. Especially today, I feel that you'll be able to find things for your professional and for your personal life today from this webinar. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, we can go and get started.
We can see it, August.
All right, good. Okay. So anyways, the very first thing actually that I would like to do before I kind of get into any of the presentation stuff is to just, again, kind of introduce the series that we have coming up here. And the Sultanate referred to the past English teacher development series that I did in November and December. And for those of you that joined us, you remember that we covered things such as like effective use of Google Forms and Miro, which was a fantastic session. I know that I got a lot of great feedback for the Miro session on American English resources, as well as for programs, exchange programs, online programs through the U.S. Department of State, and as well as other online opportunities through MOOCs. Okay, so some of the things we covered last time. Now this new spring series that I'm so excited about, we're going to be focusing on today on emotional intelligence. And now just to clarify things, okay, about the sessions, there's been a little bit of some confusion about which sessions are going to be happening in this month in this series. So next week, we're going to be focusing on avoiding English teacher burnout in Kazakhstan. Okay, so that's going to be the focus for next week. And then after that, we're going to focus on digital vocabulary development tools for usage with Kazakhstan's English subject program. And then the last week, so this will be 4 sessions in this series. The last one's going to be focusing on using debate in foreign language teaching. Now, today I'm going to be flying solo, but the next few sessions after that, I will be inviting some fantastic guest speakers that are going to be joining me coming along to help provide some insights. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into things. So again, emotional intelligence for success in Kazakhstan is our topic today. And again, I am August Garnsey. Now, I just want to again remind people for your consent of use of photographic image and audio. So by attending this event, you may be photographed for promotional purposes and things through the U.S. Department of State, U.S. Embassy to Kazakhstan here, okay? Now, in this webinar, okay, what we're going to be doing and looking at is first, I'm going to want you to gain an overview of emotional intelligence. I want to find perspective on the EQ, on the IQ versus EQ conversation debate, to recognize the impact on students and teachers, again, to gain perspective on research right now in emotional intelligence in Kazakhstan, to learn some practices, strategies, techniques, tips, things that you can use going forward, and as well as to trying to understand where you're at with your emotional intelligence through some free online quizzes, assessments, and things like that for emotional intelligence. Okay. All right. So just a couple points about me. So as Sultanat mentioned, I am the virtual English language fellow here for Nur-Sultan. Currently, I am teaching graduate and undergraduate programs at Eurasian National University here in Nur-Sultan, as well as working with English Access Microscholarship program students, various teenagers across Kazakhstan in different cities, and as well as one of my most favorite things is always being able to provide programming, webinars, workshops, and sessions here through American Corners Kazakhstan. And previously before, I used to live in Kokshetau. So I may be virtual, I may be in Florida right now, but I used to live in Kazakhstan. I was in Kokshetau at NIS there, okay? All right. So I do have a little survey for all of us to complete. So all the participants, I really want to encourage everyone to complete the survey. I will put the link into the chat, okay, right now, okay? So that way, let me go and copy this link. And hopefully the chat wasn't working for me earlier, but let me try and see if I can get it. Okay, it looks good. Okay. Okay. All right, so I went ahead and put the survey into the chat, so please fill that survey out. It will really help us out in future programming through American Corners. Okay. All right, so let's get into the very first thing that I want us to do is this little task and activity together, okay? It's called a mood meter. It's something I borrowed actually and got from Yale's Center for Emotional Intelligence. It's one of the most highly regarded, one of the most, focused right now on producing research for educational impact with emotional intelligence. And so doing this, I'm going to provide you guys with a few steps, and it's going to require a little bit of some participation from you, okay? So everybody can clearly see there's these 4 colorful quadrants, okay, in this grid with 2 different words to help kind of measure things, okay? Probably you've gotten asked this question before. How do you feel? I think it's one of the most common questions. I think that most of us probably could say that at least once a day, we get asked this question, how do you feel? Maybe it's a friend, family, relative, your colleague. Probably at some point in your day, somebody asks you, how do you feel? For some of us, it's maybe kind of difficult to answer that one, okay? So I want to know right now, collectively here, what is our mood? So what is your mood today? And as you look at this grid here with these 4 quadrants, you can see that on the bottom we have pleasantness, and you can see that it's on a scale from -5 to +5, with +5 meaning that there's no other such a great feeling, that there's no other place that you'd rather want to be than to be here with us, listening to an American talk about feelings. Okay, I mean, this is the greatest thing. And -5 means that you've had better days before. And then you can see also here energy as well, from a -5 to a +5 score. Okay, with +5 meaning a lot of energy, meaning you probably could just jump right out of your seat right now. And maybe you want to come over here and join me and talk along with me, that you have that much energy. And maybe -5, that that you aren't so energetic, that you've had better days where you felt better. Okay, so I want you to rate yourself from -5 to +5 in both of those 2 categories. And I want you to see, what color are you? Maybe you're somewhere kind of in between. If you're kind of maybe seeing between a green and a yellow, you can put like green/yellow, or kind of blue/green, however, wherever you're at, kind of. But go ahead into the chat and put, what color are you? And I'm curious to see where we're at as a group. Okay, so let's take a look here. Looks like, pull up the chat, and I do see here
there is a lot of answers, and all of them is different.
I'm seeing lots of colors here. Okay,
yeah,
lots of colors. I see a lot of reds here. All right, so we got some
blue,
some
green,
reds. Wow, blue, green,
all is different, really.
yellow. Wow, and and I'm not surprised, because we're a very diverse group with many different backgrounds. We're coming from all over Kazakhstan, and it's not surprising that we have different moods. But maybe this wasn't such an easy thing for you. For some of us, maybe it's a little bit hard to determine our numbers. For some of us, it was easier than others. Okay, so now that I saw the colors, and it's very mixed. Okay, so now I'm wondering, if you had to assign a word to describe your feeling, you have a color, but would you be able to choose an appropriate word right now that would be able to describe your feeling? Okay, so go ahead and in the chat, and go and put that word into the chat as well.
Someone said fresh green grass.
Yeah, I love that. I love those responses like that.
It's like a combination of the color association and also a word, like.
Wow,
That's a good one.
wow.
Listen, tired, calm, active learner. Good one, Zuhra.
Wow.
Well done. Okay. Excited, exhausted. Someone is exhausted. Olga, I hope you'll be okay. Tired, excited, and full energy. Great, Mirver. Most of them are good and perfect, I would say. Excellent.
Wow. Okay.
And we have, I like this one from Alfia. She answered like +4, green, exhausted, active learner.
Okay, wow. Well, it's spoken like a true teacher. All right. Spoken like a true teacher. Well, great. Well, you know what? I'm not sure if this was difficult for some of us. For some of us, we really went right to it. We knew exactly what color we were. We knew exactly what word could describe us. And, that kind of expression is maybe easier for some, versus others. And through this webinar, I want us to be able to kind of explore this whole thing about emotional intelligence to kind of understand a little bit better about feelings. Okay, but good. So thank you everybody for your collective participation with that one. Okay, all right. So now I know that probably most of you, maybe even all of you, probably know what emotional intelligence, you've heard of it before. I'm sure of it, most likely. Okay, so what do you know about it? Go ahead and put into the chat, and let's kind of build our understanding collectively as a group. We have many participants here today, well over 100 participants. Let's see collectively and build kind of our understanding of emotional intelligence. If it's single words, short phrases, go ahead and put it into the chat right now. Okay. I'm seeing lots of good responses here right away. I mean, right away, some really interesting things here about controlling emotions, being able to communicate effectively and not just be like a robot. Good, okay. Discipline, well-being, okay. I'm seeing a lot of things about understanding of feelings as well, okay.
Ability to identify your own feelings, manage them, and recognize feelings of others. Good. Emotional intelligence. I like this one. And again, control of emotions, understanding emotions. That's right. Emotions, it's important part.
Great.
Here,
Great. So
what we have.
there's a lot of, so obviously we have some knowledge, kind of like maybe we just have some general type of understandings about emotional intelligence. But maybe for some of us, we've just heard of this topic because it is a very popular topic, for the 21st century. Over the past couple decades, it's been growing significantly. So what I want to introduce here then, so thank you for those answers, everyone. Let me go ahead and start here with this. So the term emotional intelligence, it was coined, or you can say kind of, who got credit with this kind of this emotional intelligence, this phrase was by Peter Savoy and John Mayer back in 1990. Also, it's not something new. And honestly, emotional intelligence, it isn't something new that started there in 1990. It's something that the concept kind of can be traced all the way back to like the early 60s, possibly even before that. Okay, but just it's picked up a lot of kind of steam. It's become a lot more popular in educational context and also in leadership and also in the business world as well too. Going forward now, Peter Savoy and John Mayer, they say that the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions, discriminate between different emotions and label them appropriately, and to use emotional information to guide thinking and behavior. Okay. So now you could break it down. So Savoy and Mayer, you could break down emotional intelligence into 4 branches. And they thought that, there was identifying emotions on a nonverbal level, using emotions to guide cognitive thinking, understanding the information emotions convey and the actions emotions generate, and also regulating one's own emotions for personal benefit and for the common good. Okay. Now, kind of moving forward here, probably this is another name that you've heard of before. Maybe a lot of you know about Daniel Goleman. And so for those of you that may not be so familiar with Daniel Goleman, basically emotional intelligence, it wasn't created by him, but he's given a lot of credit for kind of popularizing this topic and kind of bringing it to the forefront, to the mainstream audiences across the world. And he had his initial book in 1995, Emotional Intelligence. You can kind of see the picture of it off to the side there. Now, Daniel Goleman, he was a science journalist. Very interesting kind of perspective that he was coming from in his interest and his passion about emotional intelligence. Now, he can define it as the ability to monitor one's own and other people's emotions. Now, to use emotional information to guide thinking and ultimately behavior. Okay, so Daniel Goleman, he had this thing that we're going to talk about here shortly in the coming slides about basically just kind of summarize things that there's IQ doesn't necessarily equal and translate into success. He felt that there was more to IQ, EQ, and we'll get into this here. So now, Daniel Goleman, here's another quote from Daniel Goleman, said that if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you are not able to manage your distressing emotions, if you can't have empathy and have effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are not going to get very far. So again, he felt that, just by having a high IQ, it didn't translate automatically. You didn't have guaranteed success in life, okay, in one's career, okay, and that's what he really brought to the forefront, okay. Now, he made the elements of emotional intelligence accessible to broad segments of society, okay, popularizing it. And one of the biggest impacts he's had has been on employer-employee relationships in business contexts, okay, as well as the profound impact he's had in education as well. So simply, for a lot of you may already know about his mixed model of emotional intelligence. He basically kind of expanded, incorporated 5 essential elements of emotional intelligence, building upon and broadening Mayer and Savoy's 4-branch system that I mentioned before. And so it's self-awareness, okay? And you can kind of think of self-awareness as, basically self-recognition, knowing what one is feeling at any given time and being able to understand a little bit about the impact that those moods and these emotions and these feelings might have on others, okay? Another area was self-regulation, okay? So you can think about, trying to manage oneself, controlling or redirecting one's emotions, okay, anticipating consequences. Social skills. Now this goes deeper than managing relationships, okay? And this is part of the kind of the practical application why it's become so trendy and popular and used by so many major corporations around the world, is because it's more than just about managing relationships. Emotional intelligence is also about inspiring others, influencing others, and inducing desired responses from them. And as well as motivation, utilizing these factors, these emotional feelings to help you to achieve goals, to take initiative, to be proactive, enjoy this learning process, and to always think about persevering through difficult times, okay? So this was kind of his general mixed model, okay, with these 5 kind of essential elements of emotional intelligence, okay? So now, also, Daniel Goleman, he also put forth here these emotional intelligence competencies, okay? And I think that the graphic that you can see here, the image, is probably the most easiest to understand, and basically trying to understand, again, these 4 quadrants and how they work amongst each other and how the relationships and how things kind of the process and how things flow. So for instance, he thought that emotional competencies are not these innate talents, meaning it's not something that you're just kind of just born with, but basically it's rather learned capabilities that need to be worked on in order to be developed for better success, more outstanding performance, okay? And so you can just kind of clearly see, just for me, just kind of briefly show here. So if you start always, it's self-awareness. That's always at the center of everything, okay? Recognition of oneself helps to create this emotional self-awareness. It also helps you to better and more accurately self-assess yourself. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll be able to provide you some free online places you can go for these kind of self-assessments, and helps to build self-confidence. And once you get that self-awareness, that self-recognition, then you're able to manage oneself, okay? So that's self-regulation, which provides self-control over your emotions. And it's not just about the negative emotions. I'll mention here shortly that this works both ways for good and bad emotions, okay? It's not just about getting rid of the bad. It's also about controlling the good emotions as well, too, and manifesting and using them to be more productive. It also provides for adaptability and for achievement, for your motivation, for your drive, and to be able to take initiative, okay? So once you have that self-awareness, you can manage oneself. Now, also with self-awareness, you can go ahead and recognize socially through social awareness. Empathy is something that's talked about a lot, but maybe as teachers, we don't really always emphasize this. We don't really set up activities or tasks or opportunities for students to really practice and explore empathy in their learning environment and using it, you know, for their own good and for the better good of their peers. Okay, but this is where empathy comes into play. Now, once you have self-awareness and you're able to, you know, self-regulate and have that management, and also you have that social recognition and awareness, now you're able to work on relationship management. Okay, and through relationship management, which is, like I mentioned, this is really where a lot of like professional success comes into play now, about inspirational leadership, helping to develop others, influence, and be an agent of change, to be a facilitator, an initiator, and also to help create better bonds between peers and colleagues, okay, and to work better as a team. So this is kind of his intelligent competencies here. So again, you can kind of see the relationship between everything. So for those of you that maybe weren't quite familiar with some things about emotional intelligence, these are just some of the basics. It's a very deep thing, but I feel that maybe this is some of the basics that can help you to kind of understand this really deep concept that is really a very critical thing, I feel, right now in education and in the classroom and as educators for us. Now, next, what I want to kind of discuss about is this ongoing debate, this discussion. It's not a new discussion about traditional intelligence, you know, IQ versus now what Goleman mentioned about EQ. Okay, so you can claim that, you know, you have your, you know, intelligence quotient, but for emotional intelligence, what about an emotional quotient? Okay, so IQ versus EQ. Maybe you recognize this character. Yes, no, depends. Okay, I'm sure that there's probably a good number of us participating here today that recognize Dear Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, very popular US sitcom. Okay, if you know this show, you know Sheldon Cooper and you know how he acts. We love Sheldon Cooper. Let's say, let me ask you this. So does everybody know that one person that's socially awkward? Okay, maybe they're a very smart person, but for some reason you just can't understand why socially they're so awkward. They say the wrong things, they don't know how to respond to people, they can't relate to feelings. It's just sometimes hard to read people like this. So maybe, you know, we have a friend, a family member, somebody like Sheldon, which we look at them, we know they're a very smart person, but why can't we really kind of relate to them, understand them, and why are they so socially awkward? Okay, here comes where the whole traditional IQ versus the importance of also having a high EQ. Okay, so let's go back to Goleman here for a moment. So Goleman on IQ, he says that, you know, it's still important, but it does not guarantee skill in identifying one's own emotions or the emotional expressions of others. Let's take Sheldon Cooper here from The Big Bang Theory. Brilliant guy. He's one of those kind of people that, you know, that he has this knowledge of a topic that probably only a handful of people on earth even know about, can comprehend above me, you know, but how is it that he just doesn't translate into this emotional success as well? Why does he have a hard time socially? Now, Goleman also then on EQ says that it takes a special kind of intelligence to process emotional information and utilize it effectively, whether to facilitate good personal decisions or to resolve conflicts or to motivate oneself and others. Okay, so, you know, again, Daniel Goleman, he knew that. I mean, okay, IQ, sure, okay. It's not that it's not important. You know, an IQ is important, but it's not the real only measure of success. And he's for getting away from that traditional thought of like this single intelligence, this IQ that determines everything. He knew there's more to it. So kind of going forward, just to kind of, you know, share from this educational standpoint, I'm sure as educators, probably all of us know of multiple intelligence theory, you know, from Howard Gardner, okay? So here's another, you know, person, researcher that also understood, so this isn't about emotional intelligence, and this is before, Goleman's time and before Savoy and Mayer's time. So back like in the early 80s, Howard Gardner, he also, knew that there's more to things than just like a single intelligence of IQ. It goes beyond that traditional intelligence theory. Okay, so, so debunking this myth about IQ is everything. It's been going on for a while. So it's not just only through emotional intelligence, but multiple intelligence theories. And there's other theories out there as well over the past few decades. Now, as educators, we all recognize that emotional intelligence is every bit as important to learning as IQ. We all know this. Maybe we don't know how it fits in or how we can incorporate into our teaching practices. For instance, like in the US, some states have integrated social and emotional learning programs into the curricula. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment. Now, from a professional leadership standpoint, where are we at right now? Well, we're always focused on 21st century skills, right? Trying to prepare our learners for success. So what creates a successful leader in the 21st century? Well, tech giants, such as like Google, Facebook, Intel, LinkedIn, they desire soft skills rooted in EQ. It's getting more away from everything focused on IQ and content and with these other skills that are rooted in emotional intelligence. Okay? So going forward, let's talk a little bit about the impact. Okay? So what does emotional intelligence predict about people's lives? So now, according to a study done by Yale University, and Yale, I just got to mention, is one of the foremost centers of excellence that are really igniting and pushing the way through very active research studies that they're doing. Now, Yale has the Center for Emotional Intelligence. That's also in the beginning, if you remember, the mood meter. Okay, where I had you decide about your colors. Okay, so that also came from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. They're a great source of information and research in this topic. Now, according to their study that they did, children with higher emotional intelligence tend to, and maybe this is no surprise, experience less anxiety, have less depression, be less likely to abuse substance, be less likely to participate in bullying behavior, which is a serious issue. To be less hyperactive, be considered better leaders, and also perform better academically. And I'm sure you're like, okay, we know this, that sure, emotional intelligence does help in these areas. The research is there. Maybe over the past 10 years, especially, the research, there's a lot, it's very robust right now. And there's so many studies right now that point to the advantages of emotional intelligence and what they can do, the benefits of them. So what about teachers? Okay, so that's the impact on students. Quite positive, right? According to the research done by Yale. So we're all educators and we're wondering, okay, so what about us? So here's another question for you. How does a teacher's emotional state affect the evaluation of students? Okay, so think about for a moment, and maybe you can put into the chat an answer. Okay, so how does a teacher's emotional state affect the evaluation of students? What do you think?
Let's see. Okay, Tatiana thinks that it helps to find an individual approach. Atmosphere in the class, maybe? A better state may lead to less prejudice. Teacher happy, student happy. That's right. It can be a motivation, it can be burnout. Positive atmosphere, more motivated students. Yeah, that's right.
So it sounds like a lot of us feel that, there is a direct relationship between a teacher's emotional state and the effective evaluation of students. Okay, so going back to Yale's research, so going back to that previous study, when they focused on teachers, they found that negative moods, and you're probably not surprised, negative moods will make you more narrow, okay, in your thought and your focus, and positive moods help you to be more expansive, okay? Now, this is important because bad moods will affect your ability to effectively and objectively grade, which the research showed that actually that when they compared the same or similar classes, that students overall had lower grades when a teacher reported a bad mood on that specific day when they were assessing or maybe marking or doing grading, okay? So this is just one aspect of our profession of how it can affect us, the impact on teachers. So emotional intelligence is important to us. It's not just about trying to get our learners, to train them and develop them, their emotional intelligence, but what about us? So one interesting thing that in the survey done by Yale is that most teachers, they said that actually that their emotions didn't affect the way that I evaluated my students. I'm a professional. I keep my personal life separate, okay? And so maybe a lot of us, we say this to ourselves and we think this, I keep things separate, but we're all human. There's a very humanistic aspect to teaching, and it's difficult to go past these emotions and these feelings to be able to effectively do our job and make sure that things such as like assessment are being done effectively. Okay? So what is the impact of improving your EQ as a teacher? Why? And what would happen? So here's some things from that same Yale research, that study. So they came across that teachers are more positive about teaching. Okay, that's not a surprise. They receive more support from principals. That one really surprised me a little bit. So that was actually kind of a surprising thing from the results that I saw, was about this kind of improved relationship between and support from principals and to teachers. And of course, more job satisfaction and less burnout, which this is something that I'm going to talk about next week when it comes to avoiding burnouts. Now, let's just say here, the dynamics of a classroom, when you're talking about trying to improve your EQ. Let's say that the teacher has more positive nonverbal behavior. Let's say that the teacher regards a student's perspective and brings it into the learning environment and considers this, uses it, okay? And say the teacher uses less cynicism and maybe a little less sarcasm, okay? If you bring in these dynamics into the classroom, what happens? In those environments, students are more engaged, they have better quality relationships with their teachers, they demonstrate more pro-social behavior, and they also perform better academically, just like the results showed before. So again, we do have a direct impact on them by improving our own self and our own emotional, intelligence and our better understanding, getting a higher EQ, okay? So now, going forward here, so this is about the impact just in general on students and on teachers. But hey, you're all from Kazakhstan, so what about emotional intelligence in Kazakhstan? Now, this was a very interesting kind of journey and experience for me because, yes, I used to live in Kazakhstan and I've spent some time working with different educators across Kazakhstan over the last, couple of years. But, I still had a lot to learn and to understand about where we're at right now. What is the scene like? Let's call it that. What's the scene like when it comes to emotional intelligence and research and things going on in Kazakhstan? And so as I'm preparing for this webinar, I was going through trying to find as much research, what I can find that has been published and produced when it comes to, any kind of studies revolving around emotional intelligence in the context of teaching in Kazakhstan or learning in Kazakhstan. Here's what I found out is that, unfortunately, the research is not so robust right now. Well, actually, to be honest, it's not so actually really available too. I really actually only came across maybe just a few studies that were done. Okay, so what I can kind of summarize initially from my take, what I dug into the research is emotional intelligence among students in Kazakhstan is still largely understudied. And I'm saying this because I want to try to encourage all of you to take part and to participate and try to build this greater collaborative understanding through research and studies and projects and things that you do, and to be able to share things with your colleagues, your peers, with your learning communities, so we can get a better understanding of the picture of what's going on right now in regards to emotional intelligence in Kazakhstan. So, however, though, I got to get some credit where credit is due. I came across a great study. It came from a paper published called The Relationship Between Emotional Intelligence and Academic Achievement Among Undergraduate Students in Kazakhstan. It's from 2020. It was a graduate thesis paper that was done by Lyudmila Filipova. Currently, right now, she is a research assistant at Nazarbayev University Graduate School of Education. And I really got to give a very special thanks to Lyudmila for her contributions to my understanding of emotional intelligence in Kazakhstan. I just kind of reached out to her, and she was so kind enough to discuss kind of her paper, her thoughts, her findings, and as she worked through as a graduate student at Nazarbayev University. And so I took this in consideration also because I'm glad to see information about higher education, because it's not just about young learners. What about adult learners? We all need to develop our EQ, okay? So that was, in general, just to kind of summarize her study, she basically had two distinctively different universities. She focused on 4 different areas within it: interpersonal, personal leadership, and self-management. And just overall, to summarize the conclusion, what she came up from her study was that emotional intelligence is significantly and positively associated with academic achievements, okay? And probably we're not surprised with that, but we need still more research to be done. There's still gaps out there. We still need to understand about different situations in comparison, things between maybe rural and urban areas, other types of schools, not just higher education, but also primary school, secondary school, okay? Now, one interesting thing was, overall, there really wasn't overall a difference between genders, okay, when it came to overall EI levels. However, there was like a couple of noticeable things that was mentioned, that in men, they had a little higher thing in self-management, and for women, a little bit higher emotional intelligence when it came to personal leadership. And I thought that was kind of interesting, okay? But again, so here's what is being said. The research right now in Kazakhstan, I'm sure there's maybe some other studies being done, but I really encourage everyone to go ahead and become involved in building our understanding collectively across Kazakhstan in regarding emotional intelligence and its impact. So I want to mention here too, in our remaining time, about some things that maybe you can use in your own practices, some other kinds of techniques and tips and things. Now, I came across a very interesting person, Ronen Habib. Now, he's not as famous as Daniel Goleman, okay? You won't hear about him a lot, but Ronen is brilliant and really passionate about emotional intelligence. He's from the San Francisco Bay Area, and he's right there in the Silicon Valley, and he works a lot, not just with students, but also with major tech corporations around the area. Now, in his TED Talk that I was listening to, and I definitely highly suggest, if you want to kind of understand and know more about emotional intelligence, go to TED Talk, search for emotional intelligence, but specifically, watch Ronen Habib's TED Talk that he did. And he had this question. He said, do we provide 21st century skills to our students? So let's think about this. We all talk about this. We all want to do this. We know that we should be doing this. We want our students and our learners to be successful, right? They demand, they need these 21st century skills, okay? But do we really provide it? He wanted to explore this, so he went to a human resources conference with a bunch of major corporations. And what did he find that these major corporations really wanted? Again, we want our learners to be successful in their careers and their futures. So we should prepare them, right, for these careers with these corporations, these companies, to be contributors. And what he found is that the top 5 things that they wanted was collaboration, creativity, basic knowledge of subject, perseverance, and to be ruthlessly intentional with their time, okay? Now you can see in bold, those 3 things are quite obviously connected to emotional intelligence, but also being intentional with their time is also about motivation. So what you can take away from this list is that 4 out of 5 of the things that are most sought by these major corporations is all deeply rooted in emotional intelligence. So if we're not teaching emotional intelligence and developing it with our learners, are we really teaching 21st century skills to be successful in our modern, dynamic, globalized environments? Okay. He said here that we assume that second graders don't know how to multiply and divide and read, so we teach them. Okay, and we should. But so why do we assume that second graders know how to self-regulate or self-manage or even be empathetic? It was kind of an interesting point that he made in this video. Okay. Now, just skipping forward, Ronen, he came up with this mindful practice. And I really want to encourage all of you to maybe try this out in your own classes, with your own learners, in your own groups, no matter what age you teach, whether it's primary, secondary, or higher education. Okay. So now, he was really passionate about emotional intelligence. It was really had an impact on his life once he understood more about emotional intelligence, and he wanted his students to get better and develop it. He surveyed his students to find out how much time they spend in their week on emotional intelligence. And he figures there's 28 hours per week, about 1,700 minutes per week. There's got to be some time. Well, his survey showed that students said they spent 0 minutes per week on developing and training their emotional intelligence. And he thought, how can this be possible? You know, he's coming from San Francisco, from Silicon Valley. You know, why was there no focus on this? Okay, so what he came up with is, you can see from the picture, meditation practice. Maybe some of you already know about this, or maybe you do it in some kind of way or form, okay, maybe to start out your classes. But that's what Ronen did, is he started out his classes with focusing on this meditation. Now, he had this fear that students would hate it, parents would think he's crazy, and he would lose instructional time. Surprisingly, students loved it. And they said that it was the only time during their hectic day where they could find a few moments of peace. They began to notice this mental chatter, which is like negative self-talk by students, you know, which hurts them, you know, and it hurts their creativity, hurts their production, hurts their academic success. So, and I've seen that in Kazakhstan, students as well, you know, they have a lot of subjects. A lot of them are overwhelmed, they're stressed, you know, they're balancing a lot of different obligations and responsibilities in their academic studies, and being able to provide this maybe few minutes of meditation to start your class is maybe a great way to give them that opportunity to where they can find those brief moments of peace. Okay. Now, he had this mantra that he kept kind of mentioning. It said, questions lead to focus, which lead to reality. Questions lead to focus, which lead to reality, which basically means students think, oh, why can I write this? Why can I do this? Which that question starts leading to a focused thought. And now they're completely 100% focused, narrow-minded on, I can't write. So you know what happens? That leads to reality. The student cannot write, okay? So you realize that by doing this simple meditation practice, it's kind of like attention training exercise. You know, there's other things that you can do, like breathing is a popular thing as well, to help, just a very simple practice for attention training, but it helps to improve the overall well-being of the students, which therefore with mindfulness and emotional intelligence come together, it helps to create better self-concept, okay? And they feel more empowered. Now, here's another thing that you can use. So if you're wondering, okay, so you've talked about the impact, you know, you've seen here what Ronen did with attention training exercise. Well, what about actually like a specific task or activity that you can do, which incorporates language learning and developing emotional intelligence? A lot of us think like, yeah, I hear it all the time. How do I actually put it into my practice? Well, here's a great example of something that you could try using. This comes from the English Teaching Forum magazine, one of the many great resources through American English, and you can access them through their site at americanenglish.state.gov. There was a title, this article was Nurturing Emotional Intelligence Through Literature. It was by Irma Gosen. Now, what Irma kind of summarized from her article, and it's a very easy read. I really encourage every one of you to go out and read this article. She said basically, sure, literature can motivate learners, and we know that literature can motivate, you know, learners depending on the content, but also it provides a low anxiety context for children to learn English. And this is important to provide us a low anxiety context. So she provided many different activities that focus on language development and also nurturing of emotional intelligence, such as scripting, detecting feelings in text, a feelings hunt. Okay, instead of a word hunt, it was a feelings hunt, creating a positive language dictionary, diary entries, and letters to characters that focused on expression of feelings. Okay, so again, I really encourage you to check out Nurturing Emotional Intelligence Through Literature by Irma Gostin, one of the many great resources at American English. Okay, so here's an example of how you can incorporate language learning and developing emotional intelligence. Okay, so it is possible, guys. There's a lot of different things out there, more so than what I can cover in this short little webinar here. But here's just one example to show you that it is possible. You know, maybe there's not the curriculum that's set for emotional intelligence. You need to take it upon yourself to take the initiative to incorporate it into your own teaching practice. Okay. So kind of to wrap up here, I have a couple strategies. And what I'm going to do, just to let everyone know that I'm going to put together all of my links. So actually I have a lot of links. There's a lot of links that I'm not putting into my PowerPoint. So I'm going to create a follow-up document, and I will have Sultanat go ahead and she's going to distribute that out to all the participants with this follow-up document that's going to include basically, again, a little overview of emotional intelligence, kind of the model things I mentioned, but more so just a wealth of resources, a wealth of links to various different things that I'm just not able to cover right now due to time. Okay, so strategy-wise, maybe you've thought about, would you feel that you would live happier and healthier if you can just regulate my emotions? You know, if there was something that I can do, some kind of strategy or something that I can use to help regulate these emotions, I know that I'm going to be happier and healthier. You know, that's what we always kind of think about, but it's easier said than done. Okay. So here was one resource that I came across. Okay. This had a ton of tips and strategies that you can use. And what I liked about this 50 Tips for Improving Your Emotional Intelligence by Rochen Martin, it was categorized very easily so you can navigate and you can focus on things. Because let's be honest, maybe some of us are stronger in other categories than others. It gave a general nice intro, it had about 8 different tips for general emotional intelligence development. A lot of it focused on like observation strategies because, you know, self-awareness starts with observations of yourself and your own thoughts. You need to understand these things. But again, there's a lot of different topics and tips there. It goes into a lot of detail. Again, I'll include all these links in the follow-up documents. What about children? From the Very Well Family Organization, Sherry Gordon, she provided this list of these 8 great strategies. And she went into, again, a lot of great detail and depth that I'm not really able to share right now. But specifically, you know, I really like the diversity of the different ways to basically incorporate and integrate this, not just into your teaching practices, but there's other things that focus on things such as perseverance, imparting respect within your learners, understanding about character and educating people about character, about sharing opinions effectively, resiliency, and empathy. Okay. Now, the last thing I want to kind of mention with everybody is about, so, okay, we've talked about emotional intelligence, but how do I know if I'm emotionally intelligent? How do you know? You know, honestly, if you ask yourself, like, okay, am I more emotionally intelligent than this other person? I mean, how would you really know? It's one of these kind of things that, you know, maybe just initially you have a hard time trying to make an accurate assessment. But due to all the robust research that's been done over the last couple of decades, and especially over the last decade, there are many, many things free available to you online that can help you to kind of determine where you're at and maybe where you should focus your training or development within your EQ. So here, for example, is one questionnaire that I got from Mind Tools. And basically through these 15 statements, you know, you just need to answer honestly about how you really are feeling now, not what you think you should be feeling, because we all know how we should be, but in reality, due to our personal lives, work lives, everything else like that, these influences is not how it is, okay, in reality. So again, you know, a lot of these kinds of questionnaires surveys that you can fill out. You have to be honest to get an accurate assessment, okay? But again, I'll include these links in the follow-up document. So you have these tools to gauge where you're at. So you know kind of where you should go and what kind of strategies you should choose. I'll include as well here, I came across a collection here of 6 different EQ self-assessments from various different types of organizations and groups. Some of them are a little bit more simpler than others. It depends on how much time that you have. A lot of them are short, things that can be done in like 5 to 10 minutes, okay? And the last thing I want to mention too, what teacher is not complete without a good book list, okay? Some of these I got ideas from another colleague of mine, but if you're trying to build a book list, you're wondering where should you start? You want to read about emotional intelligence and EQ. Of course, you probably would want to start with Daniel Goleman, his original book, Emotional Intelligence, and then later he had his Working with Emotional Intelligence, kind of focused more on those emotional intelligence competencies, okay? Now, if you're focused a little bit more on the professional side, maybe in leadership, Primal Leadership is one of the best books out there that you can read, and as well as Emotional Intelligence 2.0, which has a ton of research. If you really want to, more statistics and studies to show for things, if you need that, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 would be a good book for you. And a couple others that I like as well too that I recommend is Go Suck a Lemon. I love the title. Strategies for Improving Your Emotional Intelligence. And also one, if you're kind of more focused on improving your relationships, through relationship management, The Language of Emotional Intelligence by Gene Siegel. Now that one is also a good book, okay? All right, so that kind of completes what I wanted to discuss. Again, it's a deep topic. There's a lot to go about with emotional intelligence. I would say the first thing is to assess yourself, okay? And then after you assess yourself where you're at, then you can figure out what you need to improve upon. Once you work on improving these things, you'll probably come up with ideas that you can put into your teaching practice for your learners to start transferring that information and that skill development to them. And then after that, let's focus on developing collaboratively and collectively the research on emotional intelligence in Kazakhstan and trying to understand better where we're at and where we need to go, as a society. Now I have another survey, basically an exit ticket, just to get some feedback from you, a simple 3-2-1 format, 3 things you learned, 2 things you found interesting, and 1 question you still have for me. I'll take a look at that, and I'll take all this into consideration with that follow-up document that CELTA is going to distribute amongst all our participants today. So I will go ahead and put the link into the chat, okay?
I will be happy to send to our participants all of the list of resources. We will do it later. Could I continue, August?
So that way, and just so everybody, I put the link into the chat. So again, the exit ticket, the survey is there. So again, this is different than that initial survey. This one's just for a little bit of some feedback. Actually, let me, hold on a second, I did not send it out. Sometimes my chat doesn't work. There we go. Okay, now it worked that time. Okay, so now the link is in the chat there for everyone. So please go ahead, take a few minutes, complete that survey at some point this evening. You don't have to do it immediately right now, but before you go to bed, please, I would welcome any kind of feedback. But thank you very much. That was what I wanted to cover for emotional intelligence. CELTA, did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
Yes, please. First of all, thank you, August, so much. And for memories, I have an idea. Let's have a photo. What do you think about it? I want you to turn on your cameras, please, all of you, and not make it usual photo, but use your thumb and put your thumb up like this. Great.
Thumbs up, everyone.
Let's wait for others. Give a chance to other participants.
Hopefully it's not thumbs down. Hopefully it's thumbs up right now. Yeah.
Wow, so much people. Let's do it. Your camera is broken, Gulnari. Okay, maybe next time. We'll wait until next time and make another photo. No worries. Great. Let's have a photo. I will count 1, 2, 3. Smile. Dosan, did you make a photo? Great. Another one? One more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Good,
And
good.
I have something more. So first of all, thank you so much for joining us, spending 1 hour of your evening. I know it's not so easy. Maybe you're here after working, please. Yeah, another thing, we always trying with August to give you a trending and important topic. So I would like to share also an opportunity that we have from embassy. Actually, as here is a lot of teachers, I guess this information will be useful for you. We have an opportunity for Kazakhstani teachers of English. I think it's something that all of you need and you can participate. So it's a Fulbright foreign language teaching program for 9 months with non-degree program offered by Department of State. For more information, please visit USNKZ or our American Corner NS page, and please participate. It's a great opportunity. That's all from my side. Thank you, August. Thank you, dear participants. See you next time. Our record will be on YouTube, and we will also send you email with all of the links from Mr. August. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time. I wish everybody well. Have a good night, and I'll see you next week. All right.
Good night. Bye-bye.